welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I am Sandy Shellis, and I have a wonderful guest today, Dr. Larry Taylor, Larry, what he prefers is Larry. And Larry lives in Switzerland, and he's a very interesting man. He is a person with many interests. He's proficient in a lot of scientific topics that we discuss on Environmental Coffee House. And I am going to turn it over to Larry. We have a presentation, and he is going to tell us why he's here. Hi, Larry.
Hi. How you doing, Sandy?
Good. So why are you here, Larry?
Good. I want to talk about what I've done in my life to try and do something to organize a community to live without fossil fuels. And I think I had a good idea, and I learned this idea a long time ago, because even though I'm a doctor now living in Switzerland, in the French part of Switzerland, La Suisse.
Yes.
This is the title of a course that I proposed the year before Greta Thunberg came on the scene. I helped design the Black Thunder mine. But when I was there, if you look on everything that's around the pit, it was like that when I got there.
Awful.
It was just, it was not pretty land. I mean, a very desert landscape, cactus and sagebrush, but it was beautiful. It was nature. And when I was working there, I helped lay out the stakes, the stakes to say, okay, we're going to drill here, we're going to put the drag line here, we're going to have the office here, and there was nothing. So, I mean, that's what I did.
Wow.
I kept asking questions because at the time I was working with the director. We were a small team doing this. We were there before anything was done. And so I asked lots of questions. When I was working, I did a lot of work for oil companies and nuclear companies. And I even worked next to the largest uranium mine in the world, near Jeffrey City, and uranium is not carbon neutral. It's not even carbon free. They use lots and lots of diesel to scrape the earth and get the rocks and then transport the rocks and then crush the rocks and then mill them and put them in centrifuges. And in fact, they use about as much diesel energy to get it as they can get out of the uranium. I had a discussion when I came to Switzerland the very first time, back in 1990, but my French wasn't that good. I met an energy executive who was doing a presentation for nuclear power in Switzerland. And he was telling me how great nuclear was, and I said, I disagree with you, monsieur.
Ooh.
And he was telling me, oh, nuclear is great. Even back then, 32 years ago, he was saying, oh, nuclear is going to be great. And I said, well, do you know how much diesel they use to process the pitch blende to get the uranium? Do you know what he answered?
I'm going to hear.
He said, that's not our problem. That's the problem of America.
Oh, isn't that lovely? That's lovely.
And I said, asshole.
So your eyes became wide open.
I learned more and more about Switzerland as I lived here.
What made you move there, Larry? What made you move to Switzerland?
I had married a Swiss
lady
that I met.
Good
Swiss
answer.
Student. And I used to play soccer, which is like football, but there's no money in it, so it stinks less. And I used to be a referee, and when I played soccer, in fact, I was captain on our university team. And they called me the foreigner because I was the only American on the team. And everybody else was petroleum engineers. I've always said, oh, it would have been different if I hadn't moved away from my country. So I decided I might want to just try it in Switzerland and see how it worked.
And it's worked because you're still there.
I'm still there.
Yes.
I'm still here.
Yep.
Okay, go to the next slide.
All right. Whoa, here we go.
So I learned from Simon Michaud. I've learned a lot of things from Simon about things about coal and oil. Knowing what we know about coal, it's not a positive energy source.
No.
So what return on investment do you have if you're always being negative? Because that's important when we start talking about renewable energies, because there's a big difference between an energy source which pays itself back, and then you can get electricity out of it and not have to put energy back in. And that's a question I have for Simon, and I wish he would be able to help out with the calculations. When I was working for the oil companies and the coal companies and the nuclear companies, I had my attitude already, because the first activism I did was the Earth Day in 1970. And we had combined that with an anti-war rally, because we're all about the age where we could have gone to Vietnam. And I missed going there by 6 months.
Wow.
And the executives and the employees didn't like my questions. They always thought I was a pain in the ass.
A good pain in the ass.
But I think they're the ones that were the pains in the ass. They're like the boil on the ass.
Don't hold back, Larry.
Okay, anybody that's had a boil on their ass and they have to sit down will understand. That's the oil company, that's the coal companies. So I worked on surveying teams, and everybody said, well, I'm pretty smart, so I should go get an education and become like an engineer. So I started as a civil engineer, and I only did 2 years. But like I said, I played soccer, which is like football, but the football that the world knows, not the football that America knows. And at the time, we had a really good group, because we had the petroleum engineers, and then we had climate scientists. My cousin was a climate scientist working in atmospheric sciences. And we'd all play in a soccer league. And we'd play especially in the summertime, because Wyoming wasn't too good for playing outdoor sports in the wintertime. And we'd go out for beers after, and they were debating peak oil. And the petroleum engineers that I knew at the time didn't want to move to fracking and tar sands.
Interesting.
The petroleum engineers thought it was a bad idea, because they had a lot of courses in financing and just what's the word? The
economics.
I mean, it's Simon's specialty. They knew what it takes to do a certain process, and they thought it would be suicidal to do those processes. 35 yards away, and the shooter had to take the ball and run as fast as they could towards the goalie, and I had to stop it. And I got the ball, but I had my head down, and he ran into me with his chest. And so I had to go see a chiropractor.
Oh.
And so he said, "What are you studying?" And I said, "I'm a civil engineer." And he said, "How do you like school?" And I said, "Great, wonderful."
So enthusiastic.
Said, why don't you become a chiropractor?
Oh.
And I said, what do I have to do? My grandfather was a chiropractor, but I never knew him. He died when I was
Oh.
before I was 6 months when he died. So I never knew him, but he was a chiropractor near in Omaha. So anybody that knows sacral occipital technique and Dijonette, um, that's I guess it was in my blood
Wow.
to be a chiropractor.
Cool.
So he gave me a catalog. I looked at it. I talked to the my guidance counselor, and so I started into pre med. I eventually went to Minnesota to chiropractic school, and I met a Swiss lady, and I moved here.
Nice. Nice.
No
All
regrets.
right. Let's hear all about Switzerland.
So I worked 2 years in America. My ex, she passed her Swiss boards, and I came over here. I learned French, and I took the Swiss boards, and I started practicing in Western Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
And but 2 years after I started working, my dad came over for a visit. It was his only visit overseas. He fell down the stairs, and
Oh my gosh.
he fell down the stairs, but he held onto the railing, and he came down the stairs head first on his back.
Ow.
And I thought he's going to hit his head on the floor because I was on the landing below. So I reached down and I grabbed him, picked him up in my arms, and carried him like a baby. But he was a baby that weighed 83 kilos. So he broke a rib, and at 80 years old, 3 weeks later, he was fine. But I had a tear, a very small tear, but it was right in the part of the shoulder, which is very understrained for chiropractors.
Ooh.
And I had to go finally be operated on. Long story, but I have a anesthesia problem. So they tried to operate on me locally, and it didn't work. So I had to go to Zurich. And let's just say there was a medical error. And somebody, after the operation went well, but I had a pneumonia, which happens because I have a anesthesia problem.
Right.
And but I was operated on. They had tried twice to intubate me, and they couldn't do it here in Fribourg. So I had to go to Zurich. And I was in Zurich. The operation might have gone well, but I had this pneumonia. And long story short, they had to do a chest x-ray, and the x-ray technician was frustrated because nobody came to help her lift me out of the bed. So she grabbed me by my shoulder and pulled me out
Oh, Larry.
of bed. That hurt a lot.
Yeah.
And in fact, it tore around the sutures that they had put in my shoulder to repair it. And I've been operated on 4 times.
Mm.
So I had to change my methods. And when I say I'm a chiropractor, I don't do anything like most chiropractors do. And in fact, I've become a specialist on shoulder injuries. And Europe is very far behind on shoulder treatments. It's not like in America because with baseball, everybody throws. And so everybody knows how to treat shoulders in America. But here, they don't even know some muscles in the shoulder. Because of the way I changed my methods, I started seeing a lot of different patients that weren't normally chiropractic patients. I saw cancer patients. I saw patients who were having their spines were crushing.
God, it hurts just
And
talking
so,
about it.
but I had a lady that came in, and I mean, she was in tears, and I called her doctor because she was a cancer survivor, and I called her the oncologist, and I said, "What is she doing in my waiting room?" And he said, "Her spine is being crushed, but it's not the cancer. Treat her." So I said, "Okay." So I did what I could. And just to give you an idea, a couple years later, she was in my waiting room again with a big smile on her face, and she said, I don't have an appointment. I just want to thank you because you really helped me through a bad time.
Rewarding.
So
That's the word.
I like my job.
That's awesome.
Um, they have a course here called Accident Prevention and Back Hygiene. And I would show people my exercises for the low back, which take 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've sent them to you.
Mm-hmm. You did.
And I had a good rapport, relationship with the professional education department here because they liked my courses because the people liked the course. It was a course that was also taught by occupational safety directors, but the people thought that his courses were very dry, and my courses were more with a medical approach. And about 10 or 11 years ago, I got a call from the director for in our canton, which is like a big county, and they said that they were doing a restructuration, and he was talking about my course, and he said, we want to do that in all of the other ones in Switzerland. We have to have chiropractors in every canton to teach the course.
Wow.
So I tried to get a hold of my association, and they said, okay, well, give us the head of the committee. And in Switzerland, they have, usually they have one committee. Everybody loves committees here. And they have one person that's the president. And so the presidents like to talk to each other. And this time, it was all of the 26 cantons said, no, we got together. There's no head. We're going to do this on our own. And so our association president didn't ever believe me. And the third time, when I called the director at the school course in Fribourg, he was angry because he said, there's not one person. He's going to have to talk with 26 people. And he finally said he changed and he went to everybody else's way of teaching. So the course became very dry and academic instead of what I had done. So I lost my job teaching in the schools.
Oh,
But I at least had that experience, which helped me later on. In the early 2000s, I was following the COP conferences, and I was getting frustrated with the Swiss because they weren't investing in renewable energies. So I started writing to insurance companies and banks, finance companies, to say, you should start investing in renewables. And I was doing this before 2005. So
no.
Simon, with his slide, that really hit home. One of the things, I had bought an apartment and a medical office in a building, but it's like a condominium, I think they call it in
Condo, yeah.
in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to put solar panels and buy an EV minivan to use because I'm in a small town, but it's in a farming area. So there's a lot of people that live outside, and they do have public transport, but it isn't that great. And so my project was to hire a patient that might have been on disability insurance, but would be able to drive a minivan and go out and get patients and bring them back, and we'd be able to power the van with the solar panels. And it was rejected. My neighbors said no. And I tried to talk to the city and the cantonal government, and they wouldn't help me out. And then in 2014, I saw Natalia Shakova and Igor and the methane time bomb, and I was freaking out. So that's when I went into my climate anxiety, and I really wanted to change. And I was chasing the dream of transition villages. At one time, I said, well, I'm going to sell my office and go to Ireland, to this town. But I talked with um, one of the people with it, and he said, well, we talk a good show, but we're not doing that well here. Maybe you want to go to Germany. And if I went to Germany, it'd be closer for me to with my daughters because I didn't want to
Right.
abandon them. So I set up in Vauban, Freiburg, Germany. And if you ever go in Vauban, it is the ecological address in Germany. But I moved up there, I got an apartment, and they were saying, oh, we have just wonderful apartments. Germany we're really great. We're really doing the best for renewable energy. And 3 weeks after I moved there was a power blackout. And I was walking around in Vauban, and everybody was saying, I've got solar panels on the roof, and we don't have power, and everything was shut down. And they hate batteries. They hate electric vehicles in Germany.
They do. Oh,
And
no kidding.
um, let's just say that their PR is much better than reality.
Hmm.
There's a lot of stories about how Germany was powered by renewables at up to 86% or 90% on some days. But I've got a friend he controls the electrical grid in Switzerland. And I had an app and I was looking, and when they were saying that there were 90% powered by renewables, they were at 43%.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, dang.
So we started posing some questions, and they stopped putting those articles out.
They got caught. In other words.
I'm not sure if you heard about Dieselgate in America, but it was very big in Europe.
Tell us.
And oh, okay, they said, well, here in Europe, they told everybody to be the most ecological. You should get a diesel car instead of a petrol car. And they found out that VW was cheating.
Oh, I know
And
this. Yeah.
yeah, so when they were doing the test, they would do a different.
Unreal.
Um, when they found out that the car was on a treadmill, the the output, the exhaust output, would be different. And so they caught them, and I think they had to pay 10 or 20 francs or euros and a slap on
I
the wrist. It
remember.
was very painful.
Yeah, I completely remember this. Yep. Wow. Corporate.
So my German wasn't that good. In fact, my French is better than my German. But when I was there in Germany, I talked to people, and thank goodness there's people that spoke either French or English. And I had a long discussion with people from the left party, Die Linke in German. And we were talking about EVs, and I was wondering how come the Germans aren't doing more with EVs. And when I was talking with this uh, politician, I said, I blame the German workers. And he was like, oh, you can't blame the German workers. We're the best.
Oh,
And I said, no, I blame them because they have a seat at the table when they talk with management. And funny thing was, a couple weeks after that, um, I heard that Audi was going to be retraining 35,000 workers in EVs at the request of the workers. So
that's
I'm not sure if
hmm,
I think I might have had something to do with that.
that's cool,
At the
Larry.
time, I was calling Nissan, Renault, VW. I mean, I was talking to people, just calling up the corporate offices and saying, "Why aren't you doing more with EVs?" And who are you? I said, I'm just calling. So
Just a guy.
I'm just a guy. But when I say, well, I'm Dr. Taylor, they sort of, oh, okay, we'll talk to you. But I was trying,
Yes,
and I've been trying for a long time.
you had your activism hat on.
Yep. Next slide.
Okay.
So there's an interesting history with EVs in Europe. And a lot of this, there's a film, um, Who Killed the Electric Car and Revenge of the Electric Car. And Revenge of the Electric Car was tracing the rise of Elon Musk and the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Volt. And at the time, there was the IEA and the OECD said, okay, we're going to move to electric vehicles. And their goal was to have, they said, to do that, we need to have chargers, a charging network. And Germany was supposed to have 1 million chargers by 2014, France 1 million by 2015. Switzerland, they should have been about 100,000 or 200,000. And the idea was to have 10% EV by 2015, 40% by 2017. And if we had done that, we could have done a push and gone to 100% EVs by 2100 or 2020, which is in the past. We're recording this in 2023.
Yes.
For your
Yes,
information.
we are.
Okay. The reality in 2017, Germany and France barely had 12,000 chargers instead of 1 million. Switzerland had maybe 7,000, and most of them were, they had hamsters in little exercise wheels, and less than 2% of the cars, the vehicles were EV. Far from their goals.
Far. Yeah.
Yes. Next slide.
Seems like that's prevalent everywhere.
I was talking with people in Germany because Germany was making solar panels at the time. And I got a call from, I went to the company in Freiburg, and they said, oh, well, you haven't heard. We've been sold, and we have to pack up all of the machines and send them to China. We have to go to China to train the Chinese people, and we come back and we go to unemployment office. And so my dream was to buy the solar panels in Germany and ship and bring them to Switzerland by electric truck. And I tried just a symbolic trip one time, and for a little over a 3-hour drive, it took me 36 hours. Because when I was driving, I was going through France, and there was a town near where the Renault is made. It's like Detroit for France. And they had 4 parking spaces for electric vehicles with the paint and the little drawing, and there's no charger. So I had to rent a motel room and plug into the wall and charge my car like that, which takes a long time. 36 hours for a 3-hour trip.
How long are those cables that you're parked outside and dragging a cable all the way up to a hotel room?
I did it from the lobby of the hotel.
Okay. So it was a little bit closer, but okay.
Yeah.
I was just visualizing that, Larry, and
Okay. So anyway, when I was in Germany, and I was not that happy with the situation, and I wasn't that great with the language, and it's hard living in a country where you don't speak the language. So I still had a lot of contact because I was still kept my office open in Switzerland, and I was coming back to treat people. And someone told me, "Oh, well, there's this ecological project with the apartments, and it's going to be an ecological dream." And it actually became a nightmare. But I had signed to buy the apartment, and uh, I lived in it for 2 weeks before I had to leave.
Wow.
And so I moved to another town because I had um, changed my work permit to move to another canton, but it didn't work out. And in total, I had 7 moves in less than a year. And so I'm in the town that I used to work in, but I've got an apartment that my friend owns, and I'm living here now. And the only thing that kept me going, because I think you can say, in a big depression, was I was still fighting for the climate. I invested in a company to promote renewable energy. And one of the things that I had an advantage is I knew the school system. And my partners in the company, they have medical construction, metal construction plant, in fact, two, and another partner runs the electrical grid, and another one was a buyer for materials. So he was going to be helping us to buy materials for batteries, solar panels, etc. And I went to um, the school here because my friend said, "We've got somebody that's teaching the apprentices in the medical construction because medical construction is something special." So all of the Brühl is like a hub for construction in all of Western Switzerland. And so uh, I used to treat workers a lot. In fact, I used to work late at night because a lot of the workers were working in Geneva or Lausanne, and they'd be coming back late at night. And so I didn't mind working evenings to treat them. And I also had to learn. I also took some Portuguese classes because a lot of them just didn't have time to learn French. Um, but anyway, I went to um I called up the uh, teacher at the professional school in our town, and who was teaching the metal construction to their students. And I said, "Well, we should be doing some more with renewable energy." He said, "Well, that's a great idea. You should call our director, the school director." I called him, and he said, "Oh, okay. Prepare the course, and you could come in and teach that. It's a great idea." And I was going to be orienting them into jobs like learning EV mechanics, solar panel installation, wind turbine engineers, um, and they said, "Okay, let's do it." 2 days later, no, we're not going to do it.
2 days.
Maybe 2 days.
That had to be quite a disappointment.
I was disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was also going to teach, uh, have the farmers, because I also used to teach. We have a professional school here in Brühl, and in a little town nearby, we have an ag school, agricultural school.
Hmm.
And so I also used to teach there, and but you have to teach students what to do with the hemp and the bamboo so the farmers have a market for their product. What I really liked about Simon Michaud recently, he said if we plant hemp and bamboo, we can replace plastic.
Amazing. And there are so many others that feel that way, Larry. And I've interviewed a guy named Brian, a young man from New Jersey who is totally plant hemp and bamboo, talks about it. And that's inspiring as a gardening, planting person. I'm inspired by that
Mhm.
movement.
But I've got contact with a couple hundred farmers because I had some friends that are reps for Big Ag, and they've known me for a long time. And so they talk climate with the farmers, and the farmers are worried about climate change. There's a lot of people that say that the Dutch farmer protest, they're angry with the WEF about climate lockdown, and they aren't. One of the reps told me that he told me already about 2 years ago. He said, with this climate whiplash, crops are down worldwide. We don't have enough feed. And he said, we've only got a couple more months. So um, a lot of farmers have been told to wean their herd by 30 or 40% because there's not enough to feed them.
I
So
do have,
people are
oh,
taking that.
sorry. I have a question. Could
Go
I ask
ahead.
it? Okay. So, farmers planting hemp and bamboo, how much more space does that take to replace the plastic, which is a huge industry, and implement?
You were talking today about how they're paving over farmland. It would take a couple malls, maybe, and a couple apartment blocks.
I like that because nobody in the United States knows what to do with those old malls. Grow bamboo and hemp. That's great.
Hemp will detoxify the soil. A lot of the factories might have toxic soils. Use the hemp to clean them up.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Hemp captures CO2 7 times faster than a tree. And in some places, you can get 3 crops of hemp per year. If you have a very toxic soil, maybe the first two, you don't want to use that hemp for edible uh, stuff. But there's so many things that you can do with hemp that it would be um, it, it wouldn't be a wasted
Monumental.
crop.
Monumental, yes.
When I saw Simon, who was on Nate's channel, and he talked about hemp and plastic or hemp and bamboo, I sent another WhatsApp to all the farmers I knew and the reps, and I said, okay, can you plant the hemp and the bamboo? And they said, no, we don't have enough people to buy it. We can't do it.
Always about the market.
Right? I don't blame them. They're worried about their livelihood, but
Hmm.
I mean, 2023 is faster than expected.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So my idea with Windyday concept, and this has been out for 7 years. We've tried to have farmers plant hemp and bamboo, but they can't do it because there's no outlet. They need a market, and the students haven't learned what to do with how to process the hemp and the bamboo. And until they can do that in schools, there's not going to be a possibility to do it. Simon proposed it. I think it would be great if we could get a European movement to train students in schools to do hemp and bamboo. The other part of Windy Day concept was to modify the grid to accept V to G, vehicle to grid charging. That way, if you have an electrical vehicle, you can put energy into the vehicle or you could take it out. And it's a simple modification of the grid. So that was my proposal. And I can't understand why no climate group has supported it.
I don't know. I really don't understand it.
I don't understand why a Green Party hasn't supported it. And I've been in contact with Green parties all over Europe, all over America, all over the world. I've been in contact with climate groups all over the world.
Wow.
And they don't support it.
You've
I
done your due
don't know.
diligence.
So
All right. Well, let's go on to Greta Thunberg.
she came on the scene in September 2018, and I got in touch with her either in week 2 or 3. And it was through Stuart Scott, because Stuart and I used to um, communicate by email. And in fact, before he died, he was not doing well, but he was still writing to me and his, I don't know if it was his wife or a friend of his was saying that I was one of the few that he was taking the time to write, even though it was painful for him.
Mm.
So I was trying to, well, I was talking with Greta through the Stuart, but also I think Kevin Anderson. And I was worried about if she was going to be handling things well. And they said, oh no, she's got her head on her shoulders. She's going to be able to do well. But for some reason, she's never talked about doing that. She's never said, let's go into the schools and teach renewable jobs.
Mm.
Um, she came to Switzerland at the SMILE, which is I don't know what something about, it's a meeting in Lausanne for Europe. And there's several thousand students. And I said, let's convert factories to making batteries and solar panels. And they refused to discuss it. There was also a Russian guy that was there. And well, I was amazed because every time he talked, the students, there was maybe 700 it was a college classroom, lecture room. And they acted as one to boo Putin. Oh, I'm from Russia. Oh, boo Russia, boo Russia. Putin's a bad guy. And I went up and I talked to him and I said, did you notice that there seems to be a lot of hatred for Russia? And he said, oh, yeah, it's very noticeable. When I went to propose Windyday concept, there was a climate scientist from the IPCC that I noticed that he was my shadow during the conference, and he came up and he was just sort of gloating that they rejected to even discuss it. And he said, you know why? It's too technical, and they don't want to have technical answers. And
Well, that
I
doesn't
said,
make sense.
no. But there's a lot of things about the climate movement that don't make sense to me. Extinction Rebellion came out. I did go to talk with the climate group Extinction Rebellion in Basel, Switzerland. And I might have to put on a tinfoil hat to talk about Basel because everybody says, oh, that's a conspiracy theory.
Uh-oh.
Basel is the center of the petrochemical industry. I've got a question for you, Sandy. Do you know what the official language of the American Chemical Society was until 1939?
German.
German. I used to, when I was at the University of Wyoming, I was working, I did a lot of part time jobs um, as I was going through school to help pay. I was a soccer referee, but I also worked in the science library. And I did study some German, which helped because I had to classify books, and a lot of the chemistry books were in German. Uh, when I talked with the climate groups, they said, well, it's really strange living here in Basel because we meet, we talk, we say we have to do things, and nothing happens. The government does not let anything have an effect on the petrochemical industry. Uh, there's another climate group, Just Stop Oil. There's another climate group, Renovate Europe, Green Parties. And I don't know why they don't. When I talk Windyday, it's like, no, we don't want to do that. And then I say, okay, do you want to teach renewable jobs in high schools or in schools? Do you want to make the building blocks? And they all say, oh, yeah, that's what we want to do. Well, why aren't you supporting me? One of the things is I can show the knives that I have in my back. Uh, I've got a collection. One of the, when I was talking about the curriculum that I was going to do for the professional school here, I went to see an insurance company director to propose about how I was going to present the course. I had a couple of different ideas. One of the things I wanted to talk about was how we should present it to the students. One thing that's sort of strange, my grandparents were born in 1880. My mom was born in 1915. I was born when she was almost over past 40 years old. And my daughters were born, I was older also. And I told them they just finished, one of them just finished school this year. So even though I look like a grandfather, I have daughters that are school age. Uh, a funny thing is, in 2015, I talked to them. I said, "Do you realize that your grandmother, if she was alive today, would have been 100 years old?" And they were floored. They said, "Papa," because that's what French-speaking people say. "Papa, it's dad." Do you know we've got friends, and their grandparents are younger than you are? And so, in a sense, I was going to talk about generations, and because in a sense, myself, I sort of skipped a couple generations. But when I talked with the insurance guy, I said, what I can do is I can tell the students, okay, you're going to learn how to use fossil fuels. So you're going to use fossil fuels all your life, and then you're going to have children, and you can teach your children how to use renewable energy, and that's a possibility. And he said, "Oh, that's great. That's a great idea." And I said, "Or what we could do is we can try and do a World War II like approach and really do a move to where by 2020 we can stop fossil fuels and we can teach the children today to use renewable energy." He became sick. He was shaking. He said, "No, we can't do that." And I said, "No, I'm just kidding you. We're gonna teach all the kids today to use fossil fuels for another 25 years or 30 years, and then we're going to start going to renewable." He said, "Oh, that's much better. Swiss insurance companies would, or Swiss industry would like that." And I was like, "You asshole, you idiot." Anyway, this course was canceled for the Swiss professional schools here, and in September 2018, uh, I was I had some hope that Greta was going to do something, and I called up Basel because my insurance company is based in Basel. And I told them about meeting with their insurance director, and I said how he became sick and how we really should move to renewables. And they said, send us a copy of the curriculum that you had planned. And I sent it to them. The next day, this is that was just before Hurricane Florence hit America in South Carolina, I believe, South Carolina, North Carolina. And I was talking to them, and I said, I'm worried about the damages that you're going to be having to pay. And that's when I wrote to the insurance company that I was saying, I'm worried about you, about the money that you're going to have to pay. And the next day, they never answered my mail, but the next day, we have in the western part of Switzerland, we have a major newspaper. It's like, what would it be like? Not like the Wall Street Journal, but it'd be more like
The
the New York Post.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was their headline, which said, Florence caused less damages than we thought. And the passage of the hurricane is going to cost less money for Swiss insurances. I talked about this with one of my patients, and she said, I remember that headline. And I thought, what a bunch of assholes. How could they be talking money for storm damage? They should be worried about the people and the deaths and the damages. So that's what I've been receiving from Swiss industry. I talked about the headline in the newspaper, and that was one of the knives in my back. One of our projects was to build a factory in Kosovo.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Credit Suisse and UBS to ask for money. And I knew some people in the bank, and one guy I knew.
Okay.
He was my neighbor, in fact, because I had moved my office in this town once, and I dictated a letter to him that he sent off to Lausanne asking for money. And within a week, there's news that clocks in Switzerland were running slow because the electrical grid in Kosovo was all screwed up, and it was causing the clocks to run slow. People were waking up and like there was 5 minutes late, and they said it was because of the one of the things that we were going to do was to build a wind turbine also in Kosovo to help power the factory. And so they came up with this story, which was bullshit. Because my friend runs the electrical grid, and he just said, that's bullshit. Because I said it would take several weeks to get the grid back up because it was only running at 49.999 hertz. And that's a knife in the back.
I would say so.
A lot of the times with the newspapers and the radio station here, when they talk about renewable energy, when they talk about electric vehicles, they always use the lies about electrical vehicles. And if there's any news where the government says, oh, we're going to be moving to electrical vehicles, within a day or within 2 days, they always come up with something to say, oh, there's problems with batteries, or there's children mining cobalt. Everyone just talks about we're living in Orwellian times, but Orwell was a propagandist during World War II. And I watched a video about someone that wrote a book about Alan Dulles.
Oh yeah.
And
oh yeah.
And his brother, John Foster. And they mentioned that during World War II, they came to Switzerland. And they were working in Switzerland. And I've seen a Russian politician that said during World War II, they didn't think they were fighting an Austrian painter. They were fighting the collective West. And if we look at the history of World War II, something was really strange. And it wasn't like we were fighting the Germans, it was like we were saving the Germans.
From
That's what I think.
themselves.
Pardon?
From themselves.
No, they were cooperating. When I was studying in neurology, I had a neurology professor that we were using textbooks, and he just said, "Look at these drawings of like people and the nerves. You know how the nerves come from the neck and go into the arm, and you can map out where the problem is from the neck." And he said, look at when those experiments were done. And it was all between 1933 to 1943.
That's scary.
So there's a lot of medical advancements that were made during that time.
Mm.
And when I was moved to Switzerland, I heard that Switzerland wasn't invaded because they had a Swiss citizen army and they were going to shoot every German 6 times, and Hitler was afraid to attack Switzerland. And no, it wasn't like that. And I'm not angry that the Swiss worked with the Nazis. I'm more angry that the Swiss worked with the Americans and the English that wanted to work with the Nazis. And that's the history of World War II. There was a Smedley Butler,
Yes.
supposedly stopped a coup d'etat, but those industrialists didn't back down. They just were helping the German war machine. Simon has a great graph. I learned a lot from him about fracking in tar sands. I knew that it was a problem, and he showed exactly what the problem was. And we moved from 2000. Peak oil was supposed to happen about 2007. That's what we were discussing in 1980 when we were discussing peak oil.
Mm-hmm.
And it might have been true, but we went to fracking in tar sands, and they did a revolution, an industrial revolution, to move to fracking in tar sands. And Simon has a graphic that's almost scary to see exactly what happened for society to do that. And that was, each frac site needs 6 times more infrastructure, steel for the pipelines. It takes more energy, and it needs millions of tons of toxic chemicals for both fracking and tar sands, and the maintenance of old oil fields. I wish Simon would have given his speech in 2000 to the oil industry to say, is it a good idea to be building cars that are going to be powered with a fuel source that is so zombie-like?
Horrible.
Mm-hmm. Nate has talked about our future is a Mordor economy. We have a Mordor economy since 2005. And one thing about Nate and Simon had a speech, in the same speech where he was talking about Simon was talking about the hemp and the bamboo. They said, oh, we have to keep going with fossil fuels for now. We can't change. And I think that's wrong. We should have changed, but we should have changed 18 years ago.
Should have.
Should have. And one thing that Nate keeps saying is, and I saw Paul Beckwith talking about this, he says, 1 barrel of oil has 100 units of work. It can do 100 units of work. And he talks about how solar and wind power can't replace that 100 units of work. But they're talking as if it's the oil that my parents had, because there's a price, a big energy and electricity price for oil. Jack pumps use almost 10 megawatt hour per month of electricity. There's 435,000 in the United States alone. So that's almost 52 tetrawatt hours of energy each year. A fracking site has pipelines, and each frac site has hundreds of pipelines going out into the shale deposits. And then it has to collect all of that and then it has to ship it off. There's 4.48 million kilometers of pipeline that carry oil and gas in the US alone, and they use electricity to pump. We burn 100 million barrels of oil a day. 15.9 billion liters of oil.
Sounds overwhelming.
An offshore rig uses 20 to 30 tons of diesel per day to run their generators because they need electricity. And that's equivalent to 300 megawatt hours per day, 9 gigawatt hours per month. There's 1,470 deep sea rigs. So that's 158.7 tetrawatt hours a year. Next slide. Ships contribute 1 billion tons of CO2 each year, and oil accounts for 10% of all shipping. There's 1 to 4 stages of transport for oil from the well to the refinery and then from the refinery to the final destination. And we burn 100 million barrels of oil per day. I think I've already mentioned that, which is 15.9 billion liters, which is a hell of a lot. You take that 100 million barrels of oil, and each barrel of oil has to be heated up to 427 degrees centigrade. It uses 1.5 kilowatt hours of electricity per liter. That's 8,700 tetrawatt hours a year just for the refining process. And when you get that oil or the diesel, a thermal car is at best 30% efficient, 70% of it is wasted. An electrical vehicle is 90% efficient. A lot of people say, oh, we can't have electric cars. How about electric buses, electric trucks, electric tractors, construction equipment? Okay, here's Simon's graph. If you've got a mouse, I've got a mouse trap, but if you could put it, okay, 2005 is that huge, huge jump. And that's when we moved to fracking and tar sands. Why didn't we move to renewable energy?
Because the petroleum industry is too powerful.
Yep. One of the Simon made a calculation. He said we cannot. Okay, he calculated how much storage capacity we'd need, how much electricity to replace today's levels of energy. We really only have to replace what we had in the past. We don't need to replace the levels. We can replace the levels that we were at in the 1990s, and actually we're not that far off just using renewables. And what is the real cost of the tar sands and the bitumen? Because all of my calculations, all of my figures don't include the toxic chemicals. If we have 100 million barrels of oil a day, I'm sure we need hundreds of millions of barrels of toxic chemicals also. And I don't think we need to replace every vehicle with a battery. What we need to do is just start. Okay, this I've already discussed. Why didn't he ask the same question for thermal cars in 2005? saying, can we afford to build all of these cars that are going to be running on a fuel that is completely stupid, completely idiotic? And instead of saying we can't replace all of the vehicles, nobody's ever asked to replace all of them. We just need to start.
So why did we not do it, Larry?
Why haven't we done it since 2016? I've been on Twitter since 2016,
Mm-hmm.
and my first tweets haven't changed from what I'm saying today. I think I've been consistent.
And no one's listening. Very few.
Nope.
That's tough.
Nate keeps saying that we have 100 units of oil, 100 units of work in each barrel of oil. But that's the ancient times. Before, when we had one barrel of oil, we could use that energy and get 100 more barrels of oil. And to get 100 barrels, they only needed that one barrel of energy. Fracking, at best, it's 1 to 6 or 1 to 7, or tar sands, it's 1 to 4. And refining is no longer as efficient. All of the figures that I gave were for refining were in the best case scenario. And a lot of what I'm reading about refining today is they're not getting the same ratios that they were, but they're still using the same arguments about how great oil is. In 1920, one worker could go out and bring in 10,000 workers.
Mm-hmm.
With fracking, a worker can go out and he only brings in 600 workers. With tar sands, he can only bring in 400 workers. So just to say that we want to have 10,000 units of work again, it's not. Nate can't use that same argument about how great oil is. It's not the same oil.
So this is a conversation that you and Nate should have.
Right?
Mm.
And like I said, in 1980, petroleum engineering students, petroleum engineering faculty did not want to see us using fracking and tar sands. We lived in Wyoming, and Wyoming, there's a lot of wind in Wyoming because Utah blows and Nebraska sucks.
Okay.
That's a joke.
Yes, I get it.
But they thought we would develop storage capacity and we would be using sun and wind, and that would power our world.
And they thought wrong, obviously.
When I went to the climate groups here in Switzerland, I went and I said, as soon as I said, let's build batteries, no, we don't want to, get out. And they kicked me out. One student followed me out and he said, I want to talk to you. And he said, tell me about batteries. And I said, oh, well, batteries, they have a positive return on investment of less than 2 years. Solar panels also, wind turbines also. And if you have a positive return on investment and they last over 20 years, that's where I want to have Simon really discuss what the possibilities are, because that's not my field. But I talked with this student and I said, batteries are recyclable. He said, what? I said, yeah, they're recyclable. He said, that's not what they're telling us. That's not what they're teaching us. And he's working at the Swiss equivalent of an MIT. And we had a long talk. And he said, I've got 2 more years to get my degree. I'm going to keep my mouth shut and get my degree, and I'm going to learn when I get out because I'm not going to learn anything in the schools. I kept in touch with people that were teaching in universities after the 1980s because I was in chiropractic school and then I moved out away from America in 1990, but I kept in touch. And they said that the Koch brothers and the fossil fuel industry took over teaching. And so we've got at least two generations of teachers that have been learning lies and they're teaching lies.
And I don't doubt it. The whole fracking industry has I did some research and a show on this, how the fracking industry has high schools under its wings so that they can graduate workers.
Yep.
Mm.
And those workers are working with materials that are going to give them cancer and they're going to die. But they're going to be able to sell them cancer medication, which is made from oil. Today, renewable energy provides 18% of our present energy needs. Slowing down fossil fuels is downsizing, period. Every chart that they show that shows how much energy and electricity that they're using, that's, you saw that all of those workers are going to getting more oil and toxic chemicals. Okay, one of the arguments I've heard against renewable energy is they say that they have to be replaced in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what? There's a grace period of 18 years where they're delivering electricity and it's not costing society. So it's not like we're going to have to be building solar panels and building solar panels and building solar panels or wind turbines. I think that there's going to be, if a community can build, okay, if we have, okay, there's a quote and I think I'm getting it wrong. By building 2,500 vehicles with a 50 kilowatt hour battery, that gives a 250 megawatt hour battery of storage. And my friend that runs the electrical grid said at that time, no problem, all of the solar energy can be stored safely instead of wasted, and wind energy, and it would be wonderful for the grid.
And we're not too late, Larry?
Oh, yeah, we're too late.
Are you a doomer, Larry?
No, I'm a realist.
Yeah. So are we.
I haven't changed my speech since 2016. Seven years ago, if people would have listened, they wouldn't be saying, oh, there's people that are saying we could just go into electrical vehicles and that all things are going to be better, and that they're wrong.
Right.
Bullshit. Where the hell were you 7 years ago?
It's a conundrum.
I was there 20 years ago, God damn it.
Yeah. I feel your anger.
What's the Windyday concept? It hasn't changed in 7 years. Teach students renewable jobs, worker co-op factories to make the building blocks for a real Green New Deal and not that bullshit that AOC came up with. Farmers plant hemp and bamboo, research these products so we can replace plastic and modify the grid to accept V2G. I sent that off to the Green Party in Switzerland, who is starting a lawsuit against the Swiss government. And they said, oh, we don't have the money to do that. I said, I don't need money. I've already done all of the footwork. I need support. They had 60,000 people in London on Earth Day. Did anybody ask for this?
No. No.
I learned a lot from Simon, and I think he's got a lot to. He can help me a lot because I think I've got good ideas, and I think with his expertise, things can change. And I'm really excited that he's for the hemp and the plastic and the bamboo. And every climate scientist I've talked with says that's the only thing that we can do. And that should be really the emergency, our stopgap effort now.
Well, we
It's
are in an
springtime.
emergency. We are in an emergency, and we need to do something. And fast.
Yes.
Thank you, Larry. Thank
Okay.
you. Have a
Okay.
great day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.